He has a question? Oh, no. He makes nice wooden ones. They're actually very cool.
Seriously?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Since apparently you didn't do a plug in your surfboards, I am.
What? We barely covered that.
Oh.
No, that's just right. So, put your Facebook up there, Mary.
Facebook. I've never even been on Facebook.
MySpace, sure. You have these?
Okay. So, that's right. So I never got a laser. Okay. So basically, we have 3 main water districts in the county in this area right here. And the blue area is, actually this one's animated, so I don't even have to point. Or actually the green area there is Casitas Municipal Water District. They operate in a much different way than we do. They operate by, basically they have Casitas Dam right there. So they store water in that from the winter runoffs, and then they try to hold as much as they can, and as they go through the drought, it draws down. So that's how their system works. Then we have Cayugas, more in Thousand Oaks area and Simi Valley. That area, there isn't as much runoff, there isn't as much mountains, there's not as much potential to put up a dam, so they don't have that source. They also don't have groundwater like we do. So therefore, they had to import water, and they imported it from up north, as you guys, I think, have already learned about.
Do they take from the aqueduct?
What's that?
Do they take from the
Yeah,
LA
they
aqueduct?
take it from
Not the LA
from the
Aqueduct,
state water
and
project.
Colorado River.
And then we have United Water Conservation District, where we do have mountains, we do have a lot of runoff, so we own Lake Piru, but we also got these groundwater basins going down into this area, and we're able to store water in those. And so in a way, we got the best of both worlds in it. But here we have 3 different water districts operating 3 very, very different ways, which is really kind of neat. Okay, a little bit about the district. We serve a population of about 340,000. Our area is about 335 square miles. We have 900 active wells in the district. And we pump about 150,000 acre feet, or they do, of agriculture and another 50,000 for the municipal. These little blue dots in here are all the active wells within our district. And there's what, something like, how many are there, Shane? It's close to 1,000 wells. So you can, this isn't 1,000, I don't think, but anyway, so there's more wells than that, but they're all over basically, and these are all part of the groundwater pumping that's going on. About 85% of our demand is fed by groundwater. We serve an area that produces about $2.1 billion a year in agriculture, so it's very important. All this water is very important to this economy in this area. Yeah.
Is there anything in the water table because of the fracking in this county? Or anything that?
No, the fracking that goes on is usually it's very deep. It's what, 6,000, 7,000 feet deep, something like that. And we're pulling groundwater usually is in the top 100 feet or so. So fortunately, it's very, very different areas.
Yeah, there's a little bit in the county, most of it's in Los Padres, so it doesn't tend to correspond to ground basins because they're those methods aren't really for sedimentary rocks, they're for harder rocks. So underlocks aren't playing in the groundwater basins, but geology is mostly for that.
Same for the oil that was here too, besides the fracking, like the actual old-fashioned oil derricks that were before fracking. Is it same
There's
depth?
still oil thrust in the underlocks in the ground.
Like the same depth, or is it more?
It's all deeper.
Okay.
Well, that's all deeper.
Okay, so a little bit about this area. So this is the Santa Clara River watershed right here. This whole, everything that you see in there. The purple line outlines our water district. For those of you who've been, just to give you a bearing, because you can see this map again, this is Piru if you've been up there, if you've been up to Lake Piru. If you go up the 5, going up north, you got Castaic, and then you got Pyramid up there. And those are the ones that you drive by and you see them. And then you guys, right now, we are, where is it? Right here, I think. Right there. So it just gives you kind of an idea of what we're doing, or where we're at. This watershed actually is really kind of neat in that I mentioned the groundwater basins. It does some unique things in this area where we have these gaining and losing reaches in the main stem because of these big aquifers that we have. So we have these areas what are called rising groundwater areas. Have you ever been to the Fillmore Fish Hatchery? That's right in here. That was put there put there for a reason. It's because there used to be rising groundwater out of that area where they could actually raise their fish and distribute the trout all over the place. So Basically, there's a rising groundwater area in here, and there's also a rising groundwater area right near the town of Santa Paula, right in this area. And that's where the water table usually is a little bit higher than the river and actually becomes a gaining reach. Okay? But as you go into different areas, now if you look in the yellow zones of the stream, we actually have what are called a disconnected river system. And it's a losing reach. So when water flows through this gaining reach, it's gaining, you got water, and all of a sudden then you'll see it just gradually percolating and disappearing. Then typically this area will be dry in here. So I've seen upwards of 75 CFS, cubic feet per second, so that's a fair amount of water, coming out of the ground in this area, and it'll all be disappearing. It could disappear in this area. Actually, it's about 45 in this area, and it'll disappear by here. So it just goes into one basin, goes down, percolates down to the ground, then pops out again in the next basin. So it becomes quite a unique river to learn about. And then as we go down, right here, you guys went out to the Freeman Diversion, which is right about here. Then we enter what is called the forebay, which is right in this area. This is where the aquifer systems in the Oxnard Plain actually come up and they surface on the ground. So we're rather lucky right there. For example, if we did our water spreading where we tried to percolate water right here, it would hit a clay cap and it wouldn't go anywhere. But because we're in the forebay and these aquifers actually come right up to the surface, we're able to put that water in, it goes back into the ground again. Let me show you kind of a profile view looking straight down this way, something like that right there, of the system. And this is kind of what it looks like. So again, our recharge ponds are up in here. It goes, we can percolate that water down into the Oxnard aquifer, which eventually goes down to Magoo and Mahimie and so forth. And then it goes underneath this clay cap right here. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. We're going to be showing you this graph again, or this thing again in a little bit. Now, this is kind of an interesting graph in that if you look at the 10-year running average of rainfall in this county, you notice that it goes down and up, down and up. Every up means a wet period, every down means a dry period. So we do have our wet periods, and then we got our droughts. And if you do it every 10 years, you can actually get the maximum amount. So as you can see right now where we're at, this was as of last year, so we'd actually have an uptick now because we actually had a wetter than normal rainfall this year. You can see right now we're actually lower than any other 10-year period, but not in unfamiliar territory. There's still kind of, we've had some other dry periods that are very similar. But also, if you look at the last 20 or 30 years, this period in here was also by far the wettest. So we were kind of used to the last, back in the 90s and 2000s, we were used to the wettest period on record, and then all of a sudden now we went into the driest, which is kind of a big swing for us.
How similar is that trend, like over the nation or over the globe? Has that been like similar? Like, have we seen similarly like average global rainfall over the last 20 years has been?
No, actually, this is kind of unique to, I think, for the most part, this area. Okay. I don't know that you get 10-year swings like that so much in other areas. And usually it's going to rain somewhere. It's just didn't happen to be here now. So, but we got a rain last year, so I can't complain. But then also in this area, and part of the reason why we like to live here is that we know that it rains during some of the months, and we get hardly any rain, after May, basically. Well, here we are in April already. We get an average of about 1 inch per year in April. So we're pretty much good to go. We know that we're not going to have much rain here now, right? And typically we tend to get all of our rain in this period. Well, when you have an agriculture, that doesn't work too well, right? If you live somewhere in the Midwest or somewhere else, you may get rain all throughout the summer when you're growing your crops. But in this area, if you want to grow out here, you can't rely on precipitation, right? Because it's not going to rain, you know that. So that's the reason why we need water projects here. We need groundwater storage, and we need all of that because of our rainfall patterns. Right. Yeah.
Do you guys look at fog too? Have you guys monitored fog and the amount of water that's bringing?
Yeah, places for the water demand and the humidity and the wind.
Yeah, because I know that Lewis Ranch used to do lima beans, and they didn't even have to water their crops in like the 20s because fog was enough. So,
Yeah.
but is there much on like using that fog more?
I don't know about using it, but we do track, there are what are called CIMA stations that actually track that sort of thing, and it's the evaporation rate and so forth. And I don't think it's changed, if you're asking if it's changed over the years.
No, if it's changed, but just how much does that, because I know that's not part of precipitation. So do you think fog gives us maybe like an extra inch of water a year? Or like that's what I'm thinking.
What it does is it cuts down on the demand for water for the most part. So if it's a real foggy day, the plants don't evaporate, right? There's no evapotranspiration, and therefore you don't need to water as much. So more than anything, that's what it has to do with. So you'll see on real foggy days or a real foggy period, you won't see nearly as much pumping, and then all of a sudden, during what we call the Santa Ana events,
it's blowing it all out.
Then you just see it the pumping just goes crazy, actually.
Because the air is just sucking all of it out.
Yeah, it's super, super dry, and the plants just need every bit they can get. So more than anything, we see a change in the pumping.
So you can watch this the demand and kind of.
Yeah, well, we have some surface water delivery systems that feed the demand, and so we know from there what the demands are. Usually, on individual wells, we don't have we don't know what they're doing daily. We usually only know every 6 months, really. But because of our surface water deliveries, we know what they're doing.
Okay, and there's no like storage, like naturally, like fog doesn't really get stored in the groundwater at all, or?
No, there's nowhere that.
I think one of the things Jan is referring to is on the islands, particularly Santa Rosa, they're doing a lot of research on fog, and they're estimating that about an additional third of the moisture coming into the island is strictly fog. So when we're making assumptions that our precipitation rate is about 14 to 16 inches of rain, the vegetation may be getting an additional third of that just through fog. So our assessment of what the vegetation requires is really not based on how we measure precipitation.
Okay.
So I think is that where you?
Yeah, because of that, and I know the island has a different microclimate and stuff, but we still do get a lot of fog. And I know some of the older ranches out here used to, they grew crops specifically because of the fog, so they could save water.
Lima beans anymore.
We
all like the strawberries instead. We like our strawberry shortcake better than lima beans. So this is a change. So of course, the rainfall and the variability in that transfers to what happens out in the river too. So in the dry season, typically, there's many sections that dry up that look like this. During the wet season, it flows, and we see that all up and down the Santa Clara River. And this is a picture at the Freeman Diversion where you guys were at. So this is when I think I mentioned I saw it like 13 feet high, the water column over the diversion. This tailwater was roughly the same height as the top of the diversion, and this was another 13 feet higher. So it's pretty impressive flows, and you can see all the, the soccer balls and trees, and we even saw a 15-foot water tank go over that thing and just disappear, just poof, So it's an incredible amount of power of water. It's very cool. Okay, so we have a big monitoring program here, and part of this is also the county, so I don't want to say this is all ours by any means. For example, in rainfall, all the blue dots are active stations where we monitor rainfall. Some of them are instantaneous, where you can actually go online, you can see how much rainfall is going up there. Other ones are annual totals. There's a lot of reasons why people need those. For one thing, it helps with their modeling of forecasting of how much runoff there will be for flood control. It helps us for determining how much water would be coming into our lake, or it could help us size our spillway pool, for example, because we may be needing to resize our spillway pool in case there's a major flood. So all that data helps feed it a lot of information that we get. For example, this is a rainfall station that we have up in the Piru watershed. Sometimes you put them where they're not easy to get to, and you get a lot of bored hunters out there, so they end up shooting, they got to shoot something, so they shoot those. And as a result, you actually have to go out there and fix them and all that. Unfortunately, I don't get to do that. There's county hydrologists actually got to do that because we pay them to maintain this one. Yeah, no, one of the guys, they get to fly kind of, all over the place and do this, actually. It'd be a lot of fun.
How many precip gauges are there?
I'm not
That's
too
okay.
sure. 40 at least, 40 active ones.
Is it super backcountry, or is it you can reach it?
What's that?
Is it like really backcountry for
This
those?
is yeah. Otherwise, yeah, we'd have them drive in or whatever. But because helicopters are very expensive, so yeah, this one's really. We had to get it in. I think it's called Baracho Saddle. It's a place that we needed. There was no data out there. There's no roads or anything, so we had to bring it in by helicopter. Also, stream gauges. The blue ones are the active ones. We have USGS that does monitoring out here. United Water, we do our own measuring. The county has some. So they're very well, these streams are very well monitored. Some of these have been done since the 1900s, actually, the early 1900s. So we have some really long data streams. Actually, CESPI, I think it's like 1913 to present. Almost every single day we have a flow on that actual gauge, which is really, it's amazing for this area. We definitely have some of the most data-rich watershed around here, watersheds of anywhere. So there's CESPI right there. In fact, that's the USGS gauge sitting right here. And what they do is they have a pressure band transducer in there. They sense how deep the water is. By that, they know the velocity, they know the area, and then they know how much flow there is. You guys drive by a USGS gauge every single day going into your school. As soon as you cross the creek, you'll see this box right there. It's doing the same thing. That one, I believe, is not real time, or you can't pull it up real time. But other ones you can, like the CESPI one. Okay, also we do a lot of surface water sampling, and just for water quality. And of course, see, most of them are actually at the rising groundwater points, where we go, and then in the tributaries, see what's coming into the system. We measure a lot of wells all over the place, and also we have transducers now. So instead of going out there and measuring the well once a month or once every couple of months, we actually have these transducers that record 4 times a day and record the water levels. Why do we do that? Well, we used to have people go out and do a measurement. For example, this one was once every 3 months, it looks like, and that's what it looked like. So we'd know that that water level was at that elevation in the well. But when you put a transducer over it, it tells a little bit different story right here, in that you can tell this is pumping pressure, or this is pumping right here, and it's going up and down due to pumping, and then all of a sudden it probably rained right in here. You had a recovery right in there. So you get a lot more information. Here's another well, similar thing. This one's along the coast. You look at that and say, okay, well, we're going below sea level right here. But what does that really mean? Then you look at it in terms of the pressure transducer, it looks like that. Does that look familiar to anybody? That shape.
It's the double. It kind of makes me like
It's that same pattern of
As what?
as the
Near the coast.
It's near the coast.
I was like, waves.
the tides.
Tides,
Tides,
short
yeah.
tide.
You got your high tides, and your middle low tides, and that's what, if you ever look at a tide, that's what it looks like. So here we got a well, and we're actually able to see the tides on it. Is that a good sign?
No.
No, it's not at below sea level. No, it isn't. Right. All right.
Oh my goodness.
So,
Not a good
and
sign.
I could show you one that does that and is 60 feet below sea level.
Ooh.
So anyway, so, all right, so let's just briefly talk about, I mentioned that the down parts of this are the droughts, right? So here we are, 1800s, we had ranchos out here and all that, and then all of a sudden they hit a drought, right? So they said, we need water. So what they did is they went out there and they started diverting water out of the rivers, and that helped them, right? So it helped them expand, and as a result, we had some nice, there were some diversions all throughout the county. That one's up in Piru right there. And then along comes, then comes a wet period, expansion. They grew more farms, more everything, right? No problem, there's plenty of rain. But then they realized also in the next one, as they went down, they said, oh, wait, where's all the water in the river? We need more. So it turns out they started developing wells. And that happened to be right about the same time that they're able to develop a deep turbine well, where they're actually able to pull that water out from deeper zones. So, same thing. But the development of wells during this wet period, actually right in here, produced what were called artesian wells. And that's where you had a pressure source from a higher point, you have a clay cap, and then actually push that water out. As a result, for example, this one's an artesian well. It's shooting out of the ground here. And supposedly some homes in the Oxnard Plain down here used to be able to plumb their second-story house with artesian pressure. So they could actually turn on a faucet, and they had enough pressure to get their water and everything else. Well, they thought this was going to last forever. So a lot of them just let it run. They just left those things open, and they had lakes and ponds and everything else. And so all of a sudden then, coming around the next drought, all those went away. They're all like, you know, where's our water? So they started digging more and more wells. Anyway, so water levels kept going down, and throughout the drought, and finally in this area, and then especially throughout the 1950s, right in here, the early 1950s, they realized we needed more water because the county kept growing, the demands kept growing. So basically, 1954, United Water became United Water. Before that, we were a protection agency where we actually were able to get bonds, and we built Lake Piru, which was made to hold back the storm runoff, and then we'd do controlled releases out of that for groundwater recharge. And then also we did an improvement on the Freeman diversion. It was actually an improvement on spreading grounds. The Freeman diversion was still a push-up dam at that time. 1991, again, the 1970s drought, they said we need to do more, so they said, well, how about the Freeman diversion? You know, that would produce some additional yield. So remember, this is where you guys were at your tour right here. This is what the Santa Clara River looked like when it was done. Remember all that nice riparian area that you saw over here on this side and all that? I mean, they basically, to go out there and build in the river, you have to clean it all out, and we had to do some major construction right here. This was a day and night operation for an entire year. Fortunately, they finished about a month or two later. We had Miracle March, and then we began that wettest decade or 2 decades on record. So we built it just in time.
Yeah.
And here it is, first time Miracle March when it was flowing all the way across. Remember, this is all the riparian, you couldn't even see it all the way across. Yeah. And then here we are in 1998, first big storm, first real big one. So water releases from Lake Piru, what it does. So basically, from Lake Piru, we hold back that storm water, we release that water, send it down through what is called the Piru, Fillmore basins, and Santa Paula basins, where about half of that water will percolate into the ground. And then about the remaining half we take out of the Freeman diversion, where we put it back into the percolated in the ground into the forebay here. So this water that comes into this Piru basin, though, doesn't really just stay there, because just think of it, it's just big old spilling cups, right? So it goes into this basin, creates a higher gradient, and then from there it goes into the other one. This is where the rising groundwater is, and it percolates down again, and it all just kind of tumbles down and goes down by the Freeman diversion. I gotta get it down here.
The ags up top, all the ag up top, they're using that groundwater that's percolating in along the route.
Yeah, so they use it, and they really like it when we do our releases because they see their water levels just shoot right up as you.
Have they been pretty steady?
They've been a little bit better off in this drought because we get effluent from LA County, and but no, they went gone down a lot too.
Could you go back for just 1 second?
Yeah. There.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
So this was actually the last release we've done. Because of the drought, we haven't had any inflows coming into our lake. So 2012 was the last release. This year we are going to do a release. We're probably going to do it pretty soon, actually. So it won't be the 35,000 acre feet. We don't have that much water in the lake right now. So I wish we could. But, anyway, so let's see. I'm going to skip through these. This is how much water percolated in the ground during that release, equal to 250 feet from Pond O. So that pond right there, actually, we can get about 15 feet a day into it, and that's how much during that release, how much went into that pond. Let's see.
That's an important number. You're going to see it
Oh,
midterm,
24?
15 feet a day.
15 feet a day?
15 feet.
Midterm. Whoa.
Actually,
Get it in the
it doesn't
test,
do
just text me and I'll text it back.
Do we still have to remember ectothiorhodospira?
Sorry.
Okay, so Freeman diversion, we're able to divert up to 144,000 acre feet. That's what our water right is. On average, since 1955, this was last year, 60,000 acre feet. On average is what we actually divert, and most of it is spread into the ground. So our goal basically is to put as much water as we can back into the forebay, pushes water out in Oxnard Plain. We have, as you know, we have the seawater intrusion here. The idea is that the more water we put in, the more it'll push it back, right? That's a nice little simple graphic of doing that. Dan is where I think you just looked. That's cool.
Okay, I'm Dan Detmer. I'm a hydrogeologist with the district. Talk a little more about the groundwater resources, a little less about the surface water resources that Murray's gone over. I just want to reiterate a couple of Murray's points. We spend a lot of effort on data collection. This is central to Mike's talks as well. So we need to understand these systems, and we do that by collecting and archiving the data and trying to understand it. We understand this groundwater surface water system pretty well. It also allows us to move into, to model some of this stuff too. So I think at the end we'll get down to that. But so storage in the forebay, it's a big deal. Murray shared how we have a very large watershed. It comes down to these well-developed groundwater basins. So we have really good basins in the county, at least in some of the county. We're in the transverse ranges, this compressional tectonic setting where the earth has been shortened from north to south, and so what that's created is a series of synclines and anticlines. And so, as it's like pushing a carpet together, and it's gonna fold and bend, and the mountaintops erode, and they shed this sediment that makes these really good aquifers. So we have these deep groundwater basins with these very productive aquifers because we have a big river running through this area, and right where the river comes out of the canyon, we have this forebay area where the water goes in the ground. So we have this really good setup for water resources. And that's one of the reasons why the central part of the county hasn't had import water like nearly all of Southern California has. Because we have this big river system and these groundwater basins and opportunity geology to allow these basins to receive that water that's available. Okay? So it's really, and one of the words you'll hear is conjunctive use as far as water resource strategies, and that's using surface water when it's available and using groundwater when it's not. Okay, so rely on surface water when you can use it, and rely on the groundwater in those dry periods, like the seasonality when we were talking about, because we use water year round. The city uses water, the ag uses water. So the forebay, this is that critical area, the upstream part of the system that when it's above about. So this is available storage. So we don't like to talk about how much water is actually in the basin because it's hard to know the exact geometry and how deep it is, and it gives people this impression that there's millions and millions of acre feet. And it may not be all usable economically. It may have poor quality and maybe too high of a lift because water's heavy. It's expensive to lift out of the ground. So we like to talk about how empty the basin is. And so this is a graphic showing over time available storage in the forebay. And you'll see now in this period of drought, we have a great deal where over 110,000 acre feet of available storage. So the basin's very depleted. When the basin's full, we have zero available storage, and we've actually overfilled it from past estimates based on an expansion of our spreading ability. And so basically, when the basin available storage is greater than 80,000, we're at about sea level around the edges of the forebay. And we lose that ability to exert that pressure from the prior slide, showing we're trying to push all that water offshore. So really what we're trying to do is put more water in the system than everybody's pumping out. That's the basic thing, right? So, and we struggle to do that sometimes. Sometimes on the wet years we do it quite well. In other years we don't. So we have that deficit of water manifests in a couple different ways. Saline intrusion is one of those. So we have a couple nearshore submarine canyons. The outcrops are exposed directly to the seawater near offshore. So if we pump pressure below sea level, what happens? Water flows down gradient. We get a landward gradient instead of an offshore gradient. The basin's too full.
Overdraft, the long term, there's other, there's land subsidence, there's compaction that squish some of these conic clays out of the, into the aquifers that may have a lot of salts. We have rising nitrates, we have trying to dilute nitrate loading, most of that's from ag and forebay. And then we're trying to balance this all against environmental water demands that Mike was talking about, for steelhead and other species. And so there's an awful lot of people here, they have a kind of firm water use, but so it's really, it's a difficult thing to find a sense of balance between environmental water needs and then supplying people with water they want. So, so I'll talk about a couple specific projects as we go through here. So LA County, we get a lot of base flows over the county line up around Piru. That tends to be state water project, tends to be higher in chloride than a lot of our local supplies. So as much as we like the water coming over the county line as a recharge source, it's got a chloride liability with it. So we're talking with the regional board on TMDLs and trying to get the right balance there between how much water still comes over and how much chloride's in it. San Paulo Basin, long-term, there's been adjudication there, so that's one of the court-regulated basins in the county where there's dispute over City of Ventura moving into that basin with a big well, and so we're active in managing supplies in that basin. In the forebay here, we have nitrate issues. We have a potable well field there that sends water down to the coast as one of our management strategies. It tends to have nitrate problems in dry periods. The saline intrusion problems are central to the coast, the submarine canyons, and PD has its own set of problems with overdraft and saline intrusion. In this case, lots of times it's upwelling of deep brines. It's not lateral saline intrusion. We have some big fault structures, and we have some brines that aren't that well separated from the freshwater aquifers, and we can promote water flows down gradient, right? And so sometimes it flows up instead of down, as it normally does. So, and the pumping centers create those holes. And we won't talk much about Las Posas Basin. Okay, so one of those strategies, central strategies, is remember the conjunctive use. Use the surface water when you have it. So we divert the water off the river at Freeman. We may choose to spread that water in the spreading grounds here at Satacoy and El Rio. But we also have these ag supply lines. So our pumping pipeline system feeds about 4,000 acres of agriculture on Oxnard Plain, just east of the city. And then the Pleasant Valley County Water District has a similar distribution system where we have surface water, we try to use that, and when we don't have enough surface water, we pump wells to supply the river.
Can we take pictures of these?
Yeah.
You'll have them too, but
Yeah. So, and then we have our public supply well field, our municipal well field at El Rio, and this is a drinking water system. It's in, and the big customers are here. Are the City of Oxnard, City of Port Hueneme, and the Navy bases. And so that was when we built the dam. We got our bonding and became united in 1950. This is one of our big projects. We spread that water, we spread it in the forebay, and then we push it by pipe down to the coastal areas because we don't want people pumping down here near the coast and near the canyons. Right. So that remains one of our major strategies. Yeah. Okay. Pleasant Valley County Water District also gets a little bit of water off Conejo Creek. Cambrosa operates a diversion. You'll see it if you cross Conejo Creek on the 101. You'll see those pump cans about 300 yards south of the freeway on the west bank. So that's a much smaller diversion than we operate. It's not gravity; you have to lift it up, but it's a similar strategy.
So that that's Callegas and then Long Grade, or no?
This is the 101.
Yeah.
Going up into Thousand Oaks. Yeah. So
Callegas Creek there.
Yeah, this is Callegas Creek. This is Conejo.
Yeah.
And then and this becomes Oil Las
Okay,
Posas
so
as it
it's
goes up
full
through
now.
Somas. Yeah. So.
Okay, I see what you mean.
This shows it better. So this shows, this is the Las Posas groundwater basin. The district boundary stops here, so we get a little bit of West Las Posas, but Arroyo Las Posas goes up towards Moore Park and on out to sea. Okay, so Murray mentioned we got an awful lot of wells. In this area, the Santa Clara River Valley is wholly dependent on groundwater for ag and urban supply, which is an uncommon thing in Southern California. On the Oxnard Plain, some of the state water project water is imported primarily by the city of Oxnard and the city of Camarillo. It's about half of their water supply. Oh yeah, so the blue dots here are wells that we monitor, and the green dots are monitored by others. So this is the county has a major monitoring program, as does United, and then various entities also do their own. Like cities all dip their own wells normally, but we try and collect all that information, archive it, and we use that for our groundwater modeling and our understanding of the basin. And lots of times consultants will come to us when they're doing a project and they want to say, what's going on in my project area, and mostly we can tell. Okay, so remember the graphic of the cross section of the plan? We had Oxnard and McHugh, those shallow, more flat-lying aquifers. That's about the top 400 feet. So when we put water in the ground, most of the water flows into those two highly permeable shallow aquifers, and then and so it's real responsive to the spreading. And lots of times we stay above sea level where we want to be. So sometimes in the forebay we're 70 feet above sea level, and other times we drop below sea level. This is the condition we're trying to avoid because we lose that offshore gradient in these wells. And lots of times the upper system is relatively healthy. Here's another northern Oxnard well in the upper system. So we certainly go below sea level. And this is in that PTP area, that pipeline I just showed you, Arad pipeline. So this was really the pumping depression, the chronic pumping depression that we're trying to fix. And so there's a lot of concern that this big pumping hole here in the central plain was going to bring seawater way into the basin. And if it came as far as the forebay, that's where we have connection to deep aquifers. And if it spills down, we can contaminate all the aquifers. And so the state board really encouraged us, to put it nicely, to fix this problem. And so, so we did a couple things. United built some of these projects, and we also formed the Fox Canyon GMA. I don't know if you heard of that agency, but that's Fox Canyon Groundwater Management Agency, and they are the more regulatory agency that can actually limit. They can limit demands, so they can limit how much people pump. We don't have that regulatory authority. So a lot of our revenue comes from pump charges, and so people pump, they pay us to do so, but we can't tell them they can't pump.
You know what gives them authority? Which agency or bureaucracy?
Excuse me?
Which agency or bureaucracy will give them the authority to penalize? What gives them the authority? Like under what?
They're a special act district, so the state legislature. Okay, so, but the lower system has bigger problems. So this last time series here is one of our PTP wells. This is actually one of the deep water wells that helps supply this pipeline loop when we don't have surface water. Well, look, rarely above sea level, and oftentimes well below sea level. So that's not the coast, but those aquifers are connected, and they go towards the coast. So that's not a good thing. So
how where's the surface? Like, where's the land elevation there for that?
Land
well?
surface here is about 50 feet.
Oh
Like
wow.
that. Yeah. So so it's a good question. We lots of times when we dip a well, we measure the distance to the water table, right? But when we want to talk about the whole system, we put that all in terms of a reference point, sea level. And so we put things in terms of groundwater elevation instead of depth of water. The farmer might be more interested in depth of water, right? Because it's like how much lift he has to make. But when you're looking at the system, you want to reference it to sea level so you can contour it and see where you're at based on that baseline. Okay, and one more lower system well here down southern Pleasant Valley, not far from where we are, even worse, right? So we see these confined systems, we see a large annual variability. So we see that fluctuation of 40 feet between the wet season and the dry season. And that's because when the demand comes off that system in the winter, when the wells are off, tend to be off, at least for periods. All that stress, that's all a negative pressure system because we keep sucking on it, and the recharge can't fill it back up. And so we see that annual. That's a typical response for a confined aquifer. But the point I want to make was we have a lot of periods where it's below sea level. So what we want the flow system to look like, here's contouring from 2006. So 2005 was very wet. We had a good release in the fall of 2005 because our lake was full. So we brought a lot of water into the system. And so the water table is basically a land surface under our spring ponds there at Satakoy. And we have this radial flow where the pressure surface diminishes as people are pumping water out, but it's flowing from high elevation forebay towards the coast. We're well above sea level here at Waineeti Canyon, but look, we still don't quite make it down here at my Magoo, and I'll talk about that in a little bit about why I never quite make it down there. But this is what we want to see, and we see once in a while. But that surface is influenced by people taking water out of the system. So the scale dot map is representation of pumping from the upper aquifer system. So you'll see there's a lot of pumping in forebay, a lot of pumping on the western plain. The pumping for the city of Oxnard is consolidated at their well fields. So this is where we don't want to, this is a good thing, we don't want to pump here around the canyon, right? And then there's a lot of pumping here in the east central Oxnard plain. Very little down there on the coast. This is where we have a lot of degraded quality from past saline treatment. And not very much upper system pumping in Pleasant Valley Basin because those aquifers aren't very well developed over there. Okay, so this is what we're fighting against. We're trying to put more water on the ground than people are pumping out, right? 2015 looks very different. So the entire plain, here's sea level, way up in the forebay. The entire plain is below sea level. It's a big hole, right? So 10 feet below sea level, 20 feet below sea level near the coast, very flat. So the gradients have kind of disappeared. We have groundwater inflow from Santa Paula Basin kind of sustaining some of those heads in the forebay. But that's very bad place to be, and we're still in the same way. It's actually worse now. So Freeman works great, but when there's no water in the river, it's not doing much work, right? So, okay, so here, this is just declining water levels in recent years, and so I can't even do the scale. But so this has to be 2011, our last wet year, and it's been downward slide since then throughout the plain. So very few recharge events and just diminishing. So now we're going to shift to the lower aquifer system. Okay, looks pretty different. So we here's this 2015. So we have this is a pretty sadly enough this is a pretty typical contouring for the lower aquifer system. So we have this very large hole or groundwater depression that straddles the Pleasant Valley and Oxnard Plain basins in that ag area out there. So we have we get a little bit of water in the ground in the forebay, but like I said, a lot of that water we spread stays in the upper aquifer system, and it really, the Freeman does and the forebay does provide a lot of recharge to the lower system, but most of it doesn't go straight down in the forebay. It flows out radially in the upper aquifer system, and then there's areas where those aquatards that isolate the units are absent or thin or discontinuous, and so we have a large vertical gradient between the upper system heads and the lower system heads. And so the water flows out in the upper system and then it flows down at these areas where we have this emergence or this connectivity between the lower system and upper system units. Okay, so that's one of the things we're really, our groundwater modeling is helping us to quantify that better, and it's a much greater flux than we used to the coast, moving from the UAS to the LAS, distributed across the plain. So the pumping distribution in the lower system is a little different. So nobody's pumping, or very few people are pumping the lower aquifer system here on the western plain. The aquifers in the UAS tend to yield enough water for them, and the water quality is okay. so they don't need to go deep. They don't necessarily want to go deep if they don't have to. But that big pumping depression you see here in PD, we got a lot of pumping up here. And in the southern plain, where they weren't pumping the upper, they're pumping the lower because the quality is still better down there in the lower system. So, okay, so what about management? And it's like, what's going on? I've shared how we're not doing a very good job lately taking care of the basin. So for a long time, as long as you use water beneficially, you were allowed to use it as much as you need, or if you justify you need it. Okay, so California was very late in the Comprehensive Groundwater Management Act, and that came online in 2015. It's called SGMA for short, Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. It was 3 bills. It could have been 1 bill, but three senators wanted their name on it, so that's 3, and they mashed them together. But
this is state legislation?
This is state legislation. Yes. So finally, so Governor Brown signed this, and what he said was, okay, you got a couple years to get organized, to form agencies by basin, and then you have 20 years to become sustainable. Okay, so there's no expectation that you can go from a heavily overdrafted situation to sustainable overnight, but so it's 20 years, and so it's basically there's now a requirement, and there's these different standards. So it's like there's land subsidence, salmon intrusion, chronic overdraft, water quality problems, and diminishment of surface flow and environmental flow. So there's now these criteria, and so it's a new regulatory regime, and we're just getting going because the GSAs are due in June. So the formation of GSAs, and that's deciding who are going to be the entities on these boards, and then the technical work will really get started on studying these basins and devising a plan, and stakeholders saying like, what's good enough, right? What's sustainable? We think this is that whole balance thing again, right? It's like some basins are going to say, well, we want more water in the rivers, and others are going to say, well, we want to pump a little more, and we can deal with the cost of lifting the water. But so that all's going to play out. But
the GSAs, what is there? Will be 1 GSA per watershed or per
basin?
basin?
So we're using the DWR, the California Department of Water Resources basin mapping, and they're allowing a process where if you don't like their boundaries, you can petition to get a boundary change. But this is all by basin boundaries.
So it's real local. It's real.
Yeah. And so that was really, everybody says we want local control, and the states say, okay, go ahead and do it. It's not as easy as you think it may be.
Yeah.
So it's very much a local process, but they have to approve the plans. You can't just say nobody cares if we overdraft our basin, and in 50 years we'll be totally depleted. That's not an option.
I'm looking at the language of the bill right now. Is it more towards people and less environmental, the way they worded it, or no?
So more towards
groundwater.
People pump the water, right?
What?
People.
Would they decide more communities in like LA to draw water from, or would they, if it push comes to shove, would they draw more if there's a demand for it, or would they be more on the conservative side and try to maintain that down?
Well, try to answer that. You have to identify the criteria you're using, and you have to demonstrate that you have a plan to meet those criteria. And so, imported water is going to be a big part of that for many basins. Some basins it won't be. So, but the balance between environmental needs, surface water depletion, and production in the basin, those are all get made in individual plans. But yeah, it's all local. So, but there's reviews. It's like
Yeah.
So,
it's not like if
so
your community
basically,
wants to destroy, they can.
Yeah. So there's operative associations, and so to start, it has to be public agencies that sit on these boards. And so we're negotiating with the county, and we want a supervisor to be on these GSAs in Pirate and Fillmore basins. And some of the county staff says, well, no, it can just be something from water protection. And then it's like, are they accountable?
Yeah.
Can they vote it out? Probably not if you're a staffer, right?
Yeah.
So we want to have our board members on these boards, and we want to have other electeds like the city council people, something like that. So that's the position we're at.
You might not know this, but how's the Central Valley taking it? Are they kind of abusing it because of the power of the farmers?
They might have moved past denial, but that's there's massive overdraft in San Joaquin, and so
Yeah.
what they do is you're be seen they're going to have a hard time getting their basins in a sustainable state. Really hard.
Yeah,
So-
because it's hard to bring back all that clay from the compression. There's not even.
there's regional plays like we talked about our Lake Cap, but we have the good window in it.
Yeah.
So they have a lot of surface water distribution, a lot of the federal and state projects that distribute surface water. There's the Kern Water Bank. There's some big water banks where the geology is right to put water in the ground, but you got to have some surplus water to bank it somewhere. And so lots of these areas are just like always using more than.
I think
So we have the same problem here. It's like if we had surplus water, we could figure out what to do with it, but we can't figure out how to get surplus water. Okay, so the plans, 20-year timeline, 5-year progress reports, and all these elements. Now the GMA has been working on this for a while. So the GMA, the state said, you better fix your problem in Ventura County, your seawater intrusion problem, or we'll come do it for you. We'll come adjudicate your basin. So we've got the legislative act to form the GMA. GMA has had a process by which they've assumed the yield of the basin to be what it was, and they had a 75% reduction among the urban pumpers. So they forced the urban guys to come down. The ag, they said, well, we don't really want to put ag out of business, and so we're going to force you to be efficient. So there's been a lot of investments in precision agriculture, high-tech irrigation, real-time soil moisture monitoring kind of things. So a lot of the growers have become very good at growing what they grow, but some of these crops are just high water users. So the GMA hasn't said you got to grow lima beans or you got to grow onions that are whatever the low use crops are. People said, well, my rent is $3,000 an acre. I got to grow strawberries, or I'm not going to make money. So it's going to get harder now because now we have a state overlay that says, well, I know you want to take care of local farmers, but it's going to.
Are there any like subsidies?
What about corporation farmers in this valley? Do they come to this like duck to water, or they just pay a fine?
Well, we have some people that are paying that fine regularly. So there's a tomato facility that uses about 10 acre-feet per acre, which is way above any of the people that are growing in the ground are using. It's super efficient. All that water's leaving in out of the tomato, right? They're not wasting any water. It's super high tech, but they're using a lot of water per land area. So, but he makes enough money to pay that penalty regularly. So the corporate farmers, they're what we don't know is if people are going to sue, and then what will happen to the process. So traditionally, when you had a water right dispute, you file for an adjudication, which is a judgment that sets your water rates. And it's a very lengthy and very expensive process. They're generally over 10 years and hugely expensive. And then you don't know what you're going to get. You're going to get what the judge tells you got. So, but lots of times those adjudications, there's about 25 of them in the state. Lots of times those settle the dispute, but they may not set a production that takes care of the basin, right? So their eye isn't on sustainability, it's on settling the legal dispute. So UC Santa Cruz had a big paper last year that said, well, they looked at all these adjudicated basins and said, well, a lot of them don't look that great, even though they're locked down. So
Are there any incentives or subsidies for like less water-intensive crops in our basin? Like here in the plains, like.
There's some grant monies for efficient agriculture, and there's some grant monies for assessing your uniformity of distribution of your irrigation. Because you water your field to the driest part, right? So if you're in hilly terrain or your emitters are unequal, it's like you might be applying a lot more water than you need to do. So there's that kind of monies, but as far as subsidies to keep ag here, I'm not really aware.
You know who can access that? Like those lists. Someone wants to do a project for his capstone for a hemp business proposal for growing and also legislating with the local councilwoman to try to. Can he tap into that? Is it all federal, so it wouldn't matter with the state?
Nothing here is federal.
Oh, I mean the grants. The grants that they have available. Is it federal grants or state grants?
Mostly state.
Mostly state. Would he be able to access that if he can pull together an action plan? Do you know?
I don't know.
Okay.
And I know they, a lot of the counties or a lot of the cities in Ventura, you can't grow, you can't do those things with hemp in the county.
Do you want to get?
All right, enough about hemp. I gotta move on.
Like Fillmore, you can't grow it.
Okay, so cropping
And
is
there's a lot of
dynamic.
places you can't. It's a shame
And you have
not to
these
do it.
wide
That's why no one does it.
differences in the water use for different crops. Okay? So it's not simple, it's big business. Like Murray said, it's about $2 billion ag economy in the county. So it's a huge part of our local economy. So supply options, I'm gonna have to run through some of this. Recycled water.
Yeah.
Yeah, recycled wastewater. So we'd like to use that. What else? Greater diversions during peak storm flows. So we have a major permitting process, our HCP, on the Freeman diversion, on when we get to take water and how much, under what situation. So National Marine Fisheries their central issue is steelhead, and the community has much broader issues than that. So trying to find that balance and get permitted, it's a big challenge for us. A lot of these projects have long lead times. So let me go through here. Recycled water for crop use, so Oxnard built the AWPF, the Advanced Water Purification Facility. They have had trouble getting that going. Part of that is, we've done the work now to spread that around, but it's really the cost of that water that's the big stumbling block. So United wants to help. So what can we do to help with that recycled water? Well, one thing we can do is we can take it up to the forebay and spread it. So we're doing that engineering right now to see what lift stations and what pumping alignments and to do the geotech on putting pipe in the ground. So they want to run that plant all the time. The growers don't want to buy that expensive water when it's raining. We want to keep the plant going, so we want to buy it, spread it in the basins, and then everybody will benefit, and we can spread that cost around. We can also put that directly into the ag pipelines, okay, the PD and the PTP systems. We're doing the permitting on that. The Pleasant Valley system is already permitted to take refined water. We're getting close on permitting the PTP, but again, that doesn't solve our wet day options.
Do you guys want more recharge basins?
Right now, for our ability to divert, we probably have plenty of basins. So we actually have a large basin called the Farrow Basin. We haven't yet diverted. Developed. We may, if we go to taking the high flows and really turbid flows, we may devote a few basins to this really dirty water.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking for this stuff closer to it, or do you guys not mind the distance to bring it up?
Well, it has to go to the forebay because that's where you can put it in the ground.
But but if you had a different basin closer to those brackish areas, could you?
For storage?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can do that, but storage is really expensive. Yeah, so if there's tanks and holes in the ground, they're just super expensive. Yeah, we'd rather push it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's a big problem for Oxnard. Oxnard doesn't have any storage. There's no hill to put a tank on.
Yeah.
So they
Yeah.
so they use wells in the master plan. So this is back to that graphic that Murray was showing. So this is, if you imagine this is the coast instead of the stream bed, this is what we're trying to maintain, right? This flow to the coast. The wells sometimes pump water. They make this cone a depression, a lower head in the water table. Sometimes that cone intersects, and this is saline intrusion, right? So it's still drawing water from both sides, but it's drawing salt water. And normally when a well gets hit from saline intrusion, they turn that well off, they drill deeper to the next aquifer down where it might still be fresh, or they step back, right? They said, well, I'll buy a few more years, I'll go to the other side of the ranch, right? So that's normally how it works. So United is proposing to look at that brackish water as an opportunity. So this is kind of an outline of where we think saline impacts exist in the UAS So there's a lot of kind of salty water already in the system from these past episodes of seawater intrusion. And lots of times, I didn't get to this, but when it comes in here at Wainini, under the droughts, when the system pressures back up, the gradients are down the coast. They're not offshore, so the salt water comes in and it gets swept down the coast. And then in Magoo, it just comes in, and we never get the heads up because the LAS is pulling it deep over here. So anyways, we've proposed a number of wells here, extraction wells, manifold it to a plant site, and treat that brackish water back. And so it's ocean desal, but it's ocean water. It doesn't have all the intake issues and the payment issues and the larval issues and the coastal zone permitting issues. But it's the same idea to take degraded water. It's just brackish instead of saline.
So easier energy-wise for brackish than.
It's easier, yeah. Those media are designed to the water quality that you'll be producing, and so it's less energy than desalted pure seawater.
So then where we should put this water, would you pump it back up?
Yeah, so this would probably go. This could either be an urban supply because it's not wastewater, so it's easier to permit, but it'd probably go to growers. Because we're gonna, if we turn this project on and pump 20,000 acre feet, we're going to distribute, well, this is distribution, but we're going to dig a big hole here in the basin. So initially, it's a cleanup project where we'll be supplying surrounding farms with water, but eventually, what we want to do is walk this production back towards the canyon, and then it really becomes an onshore desal. Because we know we're going to promote more intrusion, even though we're cleaning up the water, eventually we're going to be promoting saline intrusion. The difference is, if we do this, we got to commit to it. We're not going to quit. We're going to keep that drain, and what comes to us, we're going to treat. So it's a hydraulic control. So this is like an extraction barrier instead of injection barrier, because we don't have enough water to build an injection barrier. If we had extra water, we just use it. But we don't. So we got to. This is kind of opposite. Okay. Let me show a little bit more on the saline intrusion because it's kind of dear to me. But back to Freeman real quick. Our imported water, so we do have imported state water. The cities mostly buy that and use it. But ammonite, there's also the majority of the ammonite use is from Freeman diversions. Okay. If we look at ag, we have United Surface Water directly used, and the diversions out of Canal Creek I mentioned. And ag is used in about 85,000 acre feet a year groundwater. Okay. So if you look at our water supply, including a rough number of overdraft, about half the water between the surface water and pumped groundwater is supplied by Freeman diversion, our long-term average. And if we take away the overdraft, in the other pie chart, we're providing about 2/3 of the water being used in the basin year to year. So it's a huge component of the local water supply, and so that's we're trying to maintain that ability to divert water. Okay, here's an example from one of the coastal wells right at Port Wainini, and this is showing the groundwater elevation here on the left axis. So we've had our periods where we're above 20 feet near the coast, which is great. That would actually be our artesian condition there. You see since 2011, we've fallen. And look what happens with like chloride. So we had a past episode of seawater intrusion in the late 80s into the early 90s. We've been recovering. The water quality's been recovering until we go below sea level. Look what happens. Our chloride shot back up. We're up to 1,700 parts chloride again in that well. We expect that to continue until we bring the basin back up. So it's very direct. That's a nearshore well. That's a very direct result of the overgrowth. So here's what we did some time domain geophysics. So we looked at we do the ladies we wire loops out, and the resistivity of intruded areas are different from clean water aquifers. Basically, the salinity is a good conductor. So you look at resistant land versus conductive land, and this is what we came up with as far as areas of greater salinity. So we think this dotted line is our inland extent, max inland extent of saline intrusion. Some of the inland areas where we're modeling higher salinity, they're not really truthed out by some of the boundary lines. So it's a pretty big area down there where it goes. That's an offshore aquifer. We also have a problem at Point Magoo. So this is a well right near the mouth of Magoo Lagoon. It's basically pumping. Your seawater is about 17,000 fluoride, so we're pumping seawater into the aquifer since it's been constructed. Okay, that well sits right here at the right here at the coast. So so this is the Pops Canyon aquifer, where we have much less impacts around Hueneme. We have considerable impacts around Magoo, and some of this impact is, I mentioned the seawater in the UAS. Well, a lot of that's flowing in and then flowing down because we have that big vertical gradient down there. We've been doing a lot of aquifer mapping down there, and we have these areas of emergence. So it flows in and it flows down, and so it's not isolated to the horizon and the inner system. Okay, so this is another well. The Q2 well sits right here. So this is kind of the inlet extent at 5,000. So it's still coming, folks. It's on the rise. And we expect it to continue. Here's the LES well right on the coast, similar water quality. I know I'm out of time. We're working on a groundwater well model, so we've done a whole bunch of geologic cross sections where we picked all our aquifers and aquatards, and so we have to build this stratigraphic model before we can build a numerical model. So we've done an awful lot of work making these sections, mapping the aquifers, and then we have the pumping records, the GMA and United have them. So we're ahead, like somebody mentioned San Joaquin. We're pretty data rich here. Part of that was because we're scared of LA coming to take our water in the 20s. So, Lippincott was surveying the CESP, and so we have a really good record set that started early because it was really about documenting our water use, and that's carried through. And so we have good well records, we have the monitoring we have, but so by having well construction and pumping and water level records and water quality, we can synthesize all that in a numerical flow model where we can do much more detailed assessments on our what ifs on the future of the basin. So what if pumping is this or that, or how, is that big project, that big desalter project, what impacts are going to generate. So that tool is just getting calibrated, and we're about to start using it, and it's been like a 4-year effort for it.
That just flows. That also compartments too for the groundwater.
These aren't these are like our cross sections. So this is like a fence diagram. So what we do is we each one of these well sites we pick the aquifers and the aquatards, and then we have to generate a surface, right? We have to go from 2D to 3D, and I think I got an early model of that. So we turn all those picks into layers, right? And then we can say, well, this is Hueneme aquifer. It gets really thick right there, and then but look, there's an aquatard in between them, and then in some areas these aquatards really thin out, and we have an emergence, and we have a flow between high and low, and it's hard to see just in a block diagram, but that's where you're going.
Those of you who take GIS, which is everybody but me, should really take a look at how these maps are together.
We use GIS
It's
every day,
incredible.
every day, so we're not. But so we do a lot of, we kick out data sets and we draw images representing. But so yeah, more to come on that. It's just getting there, but the timing is really good for Sigma because we're going to have the ability to model the system and have a lot more confidence in our water budgets and our coast scenarios. So the timing was fortunate on that. Okay, I think that's all I had.
I think it shows you where the wells are.
Yeah, you can see how deep it goes.
It's